Here we have a Lenovo ThinkPad P50 Workstation laptop that I picked up for only £60, a fraction of what it used to cost. Let's take a look and see how it holds up 10 years later. With the advent of new laptops, there's one thing that's slowly fading away: upgradability. That access to upgrade and manipulate a laptop specification has always been reveled and appreciated, and as we see from some manufacturers, are simply non-existent. So today we're taking a look at a ThinkPad P50 Workstation laptop I bought for the low price of only £60. Released in late 2015, the model here comes with the i7-6820HQ and Quadro M2000M graphics, which would have been the top spec back in the day. Despite its age, I feel like it still has some life left in it. Let's take a look and find out. Condition wise, it's acceptable. Yes, there's wear on the places you'd expect, but it's held up quite well in the years it's been around. I do appreciate the ports on the back, and it actually feels quite lightweight for a workstation laptop. Lifting the lid, which does open with one hand, we have a full-size keyboard and 15.6-inch 1920 by 1080p display. A fingerprint sensor is also included, and the small cutout is for Pantone color calibration, which is included with the 4K displays. Overall, it looks well kept with minor wear, nothing too much to fuss over, especially for what I paid for. Despite it having no RAM or SSD, I powered it up anyways. And was met with the eye of a tiger error beep. Besides the laptop lobotomy, it seems like there's life. It just needs some memory to actually work. The P50 comes with 4 DIMM slots and 3 storage slots, which makes this the upgrade king. Taking it apart is quite simple, just a couple of screws and some confidence, here we have it. Quite bare bones at the minute, but with the addition of 8GB of RAM for now and a 256GB SSD, we should be golden. We'll take it apart later on to give it additional RAM and also replace the thermal paste, which presumably has never been replaced. But first, time to boot into the ThinkPad P50. Well, it looks like everything checks out, and into the BIOS we can see the specs and other BIOS information. No passwords or computer trace are present, which is a good sign. Now it's time to install Windows 10. Hey, let's at least give it a farewell before it gets sent to the gulag. I do intend to use Linux on it later as it only makes sense. No need to cry your heart out just yet. Downloading Windows 10 isn't the most thrilling experience, but I will miss its simplistic design. A few drivers and updates later, we should be good to go. At least we now know the ThinkPad is operational, so let's give it a further disassembly to investigate what's lurking within. This is probably one of the harder disassemblies I've had to do. Not sure why Lenovo went with such a convoluting design, so don't take this as a guide, please. Anyways, let's start off by taking out that brick of a battery and remove the countless screws which I'll most definitely lose track of. Next we turn our attention to the keyboard, which was reluctant to come out. I wonder why. With the aid of a pry tool, it was swiftly taken out. Time to take out the palm rest, which conceals the P50's ribcage. I suppose that's why the design is so complicated, as it provides extra protection during harsh use. Quite similar to older ThinkPad models that featured a crap ton of screws to make you go crazy. But with that, you get exceptional durability. A few screws out of the way and both the display and metal plate come right out. Now we can work on the main components. Firstly, the fan assembly, which was caked in a thick layer of dust. The thermal paste was essentially concrete, but with a bit of isopropyl alcohol, it ceased to exist. Some Arctic MX5 should do the trick for now. And of course, let's clean that filthy fan assembly. Nicely does it. Of course, there's another 2 free DIMM slots, so let's add in another 8GB of RAM to a total of 16. The P50 supports up to 64GB of RAM, but at the time of filming, I didn't have 4 16GB sticks. With that done, let's put the metal plate back in as well as the display. Screw them all down and of course connect all the cables and make an effort at cable managing, which took ages. The palm rest clips back in as well as the keyboard, and of course a whole load of screws which weren't screwed in with confidence. SSD and battery later, we're finally done. What a relief. Buying a used laptop from eBay especially is prone to some filthy examples, so it's best to give it a good clean before using it. A small microfiber cloth and eucalyptus spray did it well with removing the grime. Top and bottom, flip it around and open it up. Get around the crevices in the keyboard and of course that display. With it a bit more presentable, let's finally take a look. As luck would have had it, the ThinkPad boots up right into Windows 10 and we can finally inspect the specs, which of course is an i7-6820HQ CPU with 4 cores and 8 threads, the 16GB of DDR3 2133MHz RAM and a 256GB Samsung NVMe SSD, AC Wi-Fi and the Nvidia Quadro M2000N GPU with 4GB of GDDR5 VRAM. For the time, these specifications would have been killer. Battery health also looked quite good with 88% remaining capacity and 299 battery cycles. So close. Battery life on the P50 varies from around 2 hours to 6, depending on usage. In Cinebench R23 we got a pretty respectable score of 3857, which is in line with the i7-1165G7. For a near 10-year-old chip, this result ain't bad whatsoever. Would you run CPU intensive tasks on it nowadays? Probably not, but this doesn't mean it's unusable. This chip can still handle tasks at reasonable proficiency. To test the GPU, we're on Valley Benchmark at high settings and system resolution at 1920 by 1080. During the test, it was pretty stable throughout with a few minor dips, but nothing extreme. We're talking about a 45 FPS average up to this point, which is much higher than expected. These Quadro graphics can certainly pack a punch. At the end, we got an average FPS of 44.2 and a score of 1850. This level of performance seen here is quite comparable to some much newer machines, so it wouldn't shock me if it could handle some video editing or CAD work. Of course, thermals are quite important, especially with these aging workstations, so a quick 8064 stress test was run to see whether there were any major fluctuations or concerning numbers, as thermal throttling can make or break these older systems. Figuratively, of course. Thankfully not. Nothing out of the ordinary with CPU temps hovering around the mid-70s, which is what you'd expect. In Minecraft Java 1.21 on medium settings, we saw a playable average of around 150 FPS with a few dips when generating new terrain. Playing the game as normal and flying around works well with a stable frame rate. Using shaders also saw quite stable frame rates and the game looked miles better. I think it's no surprise that Minecraft played well, but for a near decade old machine playing the latest version to a decent level, it shouldn't be ignored. In GTA 5 we saw okay performance. I tried to play the enhanced version, which subsequently failed to load. On very high settings we got around 40 to 50 FPS average, which is lower than expected. I guess with some games the Quadro GPU doesn't suit it, but alas we did see a half playable experience which wasn't helped by my awful gameplay. I also tried to load up The Last of Us, which didn't even run due to the lack of DX12 support. The display that comes with the P50 is a 1920 by 1080p IPS panel with 45% NTSC color gamut and 250 nits of brightness. Not the best display out there, but I can get past that if colors aren't too far off, which this isn't. They look decent, but not exceptional. I think the strength of the P50 has to be the speakers. They're actually quite good. With the speaker grill at the front, they really do pop out and not too bass heavy, which I like. Using the ThinkPad P50 as normal works well with no slowdowns or lag. The keyboard is just like any other ThinkPad keyboard with sufficient travel and depth. As always, it's excellent. I guess one gripe I have with it is there's no backlight, which would have been a bonus. And of course the fingerprint scanner, which works as intended. I think the P50 is slowly growing on me. As for some light video editing, well, the ThinkPad P50 did quite well. In Premiere Pro, editing a small 30-second 1080p clip was no hard task. Granted, this is not indicative on its overall performance during large timelines, so your mileage may vary. But editing small clips, for example, should work with flying colors. Adding layers, effects, and color grading didn't render the laptop useless, and total render time was around 20 seconds. Overall, I think it did quite well, especially for the age of the hardware, and for some amateur video editors, it could be a decent budget editing machine. With the included dock connector, I thought why not try it out? I mean, it's an integral part of the ThinkPad experience. Well, I guess my luck ran out as I seem to have bought the wrong one, and the P50 wasn't playing ball. But if you do manage to buy a P50, then definitely go for the dock, as you get an expansive array of extra ports and increased productivity. One last thing, I only used Windows for the purpose of this video, but in actuality I'd recommend to throw a distro of Linux on it. So let's swap out that SSD and put one in with Linux Mint, which I think should suit it well. Using the ThinkPad P50, I wouldn't have known it was nearly a decade old purely by its performance. maybe by its aesthetics, but hey, I guess looks are subjective. Overall, it blew me away at how usable it still is. It most definitely shouldn't be ignored in 2025 and beyond. Anyways, I'll leave it here. What do you think about the ThinkPad P50? Leave your thoughts down below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and also turn on notifications so you don't miss another upload. That's all from me. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.